Aye, we give you the facts. It's not what you think. Popeye Newsling, Young King, 1 yard, bless.
Good morning, Popeye. Grandma watch Popeyes every morning and every night.
Greetings viewers and subscribers. In today's journey, we are traveling along the PJ Patterson leg of Highway 2000. We are traveling from east towards west. Sit back, relax and enjoy this journey with me. Now, we are going to be resuming the news roundup tomorrow. In this video, we are going to be talking about the case involving Senior Superintendent Anthony Castelle. Senior Superintendent Castelle, he's one of 3 senior superintendents who I can remember who have faced criminal charges. Renato Adams, he was found not guilty, and James Forbes, he was convicted in the parish court, but he was freed by the appeal court. Harry Bungles Daly, he was also freed by the appeals court, but he was a superintendent, not a senior soup. So let's talk about the case involving Senior Soup Castelle and where the case is at now. We are also going to talk about what's the next possible move for Senior Soup Castelle. Remember to hit on the love button from now, as also share the video. We are not going to be able to put out any birthday greetings today. We are going to be resuming that tomorrow. Alright? We have a long weekend. Now, on the afternoon of Friday, January 22, 2016, Senior Superintendent Castelle, he was then attached to the Area 1 headquarters in Montego Bay. He was in charge of a team of police officers on the streets of Montego Bay in the parish of St. James. They were on special operations with a team of Transport Authority officers. They were out seizing robot taxis, or taxis that were operating without a road license, as well as contrary to their road license. Whilst they were on the street, here comes a Toyota Corolla motorcar. It was being driven by a man named Mr. Lenford Grant. Now, I'm calling his name because the Court of Appeal document containing his name was made public on the Court of Appeal website. Mr. Grant, he was driving this Toyota Corolla motorcar, and in the car, he had 6 passengers. One of the passengers in the car was a female named Janice Hines. Now, Janice, she was pregnant at the time. She was seated on the back seat of the car. It is said that Senior Superintendent Castelle, he instructed the driver for the car, Mr. Lenford Grant, to stop. Mr. Grant, he disobeyed SSP Castelle's instruction and he drove away. Remember now, he had 6 passengers in the car. Senior Superintendent Castelle, he felt disrespected by Lenford disobeying his command. So he jumped into an unmarked police vehicle that he was driving. He instructed a district constable named McIntosh to come with him, and Castelle started chasing the vehicle. He turned on the siren and the blue flashing lights, and he was chasing the vehicle, but Mr. Grant, he continued driving. He did not stop. All this time, you can just imagine, SSP Castelle, him blood a boil. What he did next changed a lot of people's lives, including SSP Castelle's life forever. What Castelle did was he pulled his gun, his 9mm pistol, and he fired 5 shots. The shots were fired in the air, and according to the evidence, shots were also fired towards the car that was driving away from him, with 7 persons to include the driver in it, to include men and women. Janice Hines, the pregnant lady who was on the back seat of the car, she cried out that she was shot. The car, it then crashed into a wall. Now, the driver for the car, Lenford Grant, he jumped out and he ran away, making good his escape. Senior Superintendent Castelle, he then realized that Janice Hines was shot. He rushed her to the Cornwall Regional Hospital where she was treated and admitted. Now, INDECOM, they investigated the case and they arrested and charged Senior Superintendent Castelle and District Constable McIntosh for 1, unlawful wounding, and 2, misconduct in a public office contrary to common law. Both Senior Superintendent Castelle and DC McIntosh, they were brought before the St. James Parish Court in Montego Bay on Monday, January 16, 2017, where the case was mentioned and postponed. Both of them were offered bail by the courts. The case, it was eventually tried and it was concluded in the St. James Parish Court. And you want to know something? The judge who presided over this case is the daughter of a retired Deputy Superintendent of Police. Yes. At this trial, the witnesses, to include the driver for the car and Miss Janice Hines, they gave evidence. The driver for the car, he told the court that he was operating contrary to his license and he was afraid that the Transport Authority officers would seize the car, and that is why he tried to elude the police. Miss Hines, the lady who was allegedly wounded by SSP Castelle, she also gave evidence. Now, they were both cross-examined by SSP Castelle's lawyer. SSP Castelle, he also gave evidence, but he was not cross-examined by the clerk of courts. Now, let me tell you how this works. And it's not because SSP Castelle was a police officer why he was not cross-examined. Now, in the court, once you are an accused, meaning once you are charged and you are facing the court, whenever the case is being tried and the prosecution or the Crown close its case, it's now time for the defense to present its case. The accused, he can do one of three things. The accused can choose to remain silent, or he can give an unsworn statement from the prisoner's dock. When the accused do that, the clerk of court or the Crown Counsel cannot question him or her. Or 3, the accused can choose to go into the witness box. He or she can be sworn or affirmed and give evidence. The clerk of court or the Crown Counsel. Or if a lawyer is prosecuting the case by way of a fiat, they can ask the accused questions. Now, SSP Castelle, he chose to give an unsworn statement from the dock. In his unsworn statement, he admitted that he did chase the car. He also admitted that he fired 5 shots, albeit warning shots in the air. He told the court that he did not injure anyone because he did not fire any shots at the motor car. The case was put off until Thursday, November 22, 2018 for a verdict. Now, on that date, the judge, she found District Constable McIntosh not guilty, so he was free to go. There was no evidence that he fired any shots. SSP Castelle, he was found guilty for the 2 charges. The case was again put off for sentencing on Friday, December 14, 2018. SSP Castelle, age 56 years old at the time, he was ordered to pay a fine of 1 million Jamaican dollars or serve 30 days in prison for unlawful wounding, and he was admonished and discharged for misconduct in a public office. That is also a conviction. So, attorney at law, U. Wildman, he filed an appeal in the appeal court on behalf of Senior Superintendent Castelle. Now, some of the grounds on which he filed the appeal included: 1, that the parish judge erred in law in failing to appreciate that the arrest and charge of Senior Sup Castelle by an INDECOM officer was illegal. 2, that the parish judge erred in law in failing to uphold the no-case submission that was made on behalf of SSP Castelle at the end of the prosecution's case, and that there was no evidence connecting Castelle to Janice Hines' injuries because the fragments recovered from the Toyota Corolla that Janice Hines was in did not establish that such fragments came from the gun that was in the possession of SSP Castelle. 3, that the parish court judge erred in law in failing to appreciate that there was no medical evidence tendered by the prosecution to show that Janice Hines was in fact injured by any missile coming from the weapon of SSP Castelle. 4. That the parish judge erred in law in failing to appreciate that by acquitting District Constable McIntosh, who was charged jointly with Castelle on the basis that there was no fragment connected to his gun in the motor car, should have guided the parish court judge to acquit SSP Castelle, as there was no bullet found in the car connecting to SSP Castelle's gun. Remember now, we are talking about the grounds on which the appeal was filed. 5. That the parish court judge erred in law in failing to appreciate that where persons are charged jointly in the commission of an offense and there is no evidence connecting either of the accused persons to the offense and there was no evidence that they were acting in concert, both of them must be acquitted. 6. That the parish court judge erred in law in failing to appreciate that in assessing whether the circumstantial evidence relied on by the prosecution was sufficient to ground a conviction, it had to satisfy the standard that leads to one conclusion and one conclusion only, and inconsistent with any other rational explanation. Now, let's look briefly at one of the grounds for appeal and how the prosecution responded. Ground 1. The lawyer for SSP Castelle, Mr. U. Wildman, he highlighted the fact that INDECOM carried out the investigation as well as the arrest and charge of Castelle. He submitted that it has been established by the Privy Council in the case of the Commissioner of INDECOM versus the Police Federation and others that under the provisions of the INDECOM Act of 2010, INDECOM does not have the power to arrest and charge anyone during the course of its investigations because it is purely an investigative body and its sole function is to investigate and to turn over the fruits of its investigations to the DPP, who should determine whether criminal charges should be preferred. Remember now, an officer from INDECOM had arrested and charged Castelle. Now, Mr. U. Wildman, he submitted that the prosecution that was launched against Castelle by INDECOM was a nullity. And when the parish court judge had the indictment preferred against SSP Castelle and embarked on the trial, she had no jurisdiction to do so. As a result, Mr. Wildman said that the trial was a nullity. Mr. Wildman, he further asserted that the witnesses' statements that were collected by INDECOM could not have been used to mount the prosecution against SSP Castelle because the disclosure of those statements would have amounted to a breach of the INDECOM Act. Now, here is how the Crown responded to what Mr. Wildman said. The Crown conceded that the decision in the INDECOM case established that INDECOM and its officers did not have the legal authority to lay an information against Castelle or any other police officer. The prosecution, they also conceded that INDECOM did not have any legal authority to arrest or charge SSP Castelle or any other police officer and accordingly acted ultra vires to the INDECOM Act. Now, the phrase ultra vires is Latin and it means beyond the powers. So the Crown, they conceded that INDECOM acted beyond its powers in arresting and charging Castelle. So listen to this now. Listen this. Despite the Crown making these concessions, they submitted that Castelle, he was tried on an indictment signed by a duly appointed clerk of the courts after the parish judge granted the order for indictment. The Crown contended that, therefore, although the process by which Castelle was brought before the court was irregular, he nonetheless submitted to the jurisdiction of the court. The Crown submitted that the trial could only be considered a nullity where no order of indictment was granted or signed by the parish court judge, which was not the situation in this case. The Court of Appeal judges, they analyzed this argument by Mr. Wildman on behalf of SSP Castelle. They also looked at similar cases ruled on by the Privy Council, and they concluded that the nature of the breach was not such as to render the trial a nullity, and that the defect in the originating process was cured by the parish court judge granting an order of indictment for the trial of SSP Castelle to proceed, and the subsequent proffering of the indictment by the clerk of the courts. The Court of Appeal judges went on to say the trial of SSP Castelle, which ensued following these procedures, would not have been tainted by the initial procedural breaches of INDECOM. The Court of Appeal judges also stated that SSP Castelle, or the lawyer acting on his behalf, failed to object to the court's jurisdiction before the commencement of the trial, but sought to do so during the course of the trial after the INDECOM case was ruled on in the Privy Council. You understand what the judges are saying right here? They are saying that Castelle, or his lawyer, they did not object to the trial before it started, but they did so during the trial. Remember now, that ruling by the Privy Council, it was made during the time that Castelle's case was being tried. I think it's about April or May 2018. If I'm wrong, please correct me. But the Court of Appeal judges, they noted that the parish court judge refused to uphold the objection, and they are of the view that she cannot be faulted for doing so. Remember that another grounds for appeal is that Mr. Wildman, he had submitted that the case should have been dismissed when the no case submission was made. Now, the Court of Appeal judges, they disagreed, and they stated that of significance is the fact that there was evidence that SSP Castelle was the only person known to have fired his gun. This was a fact that was admitted by Castelle himself. The judges also noted that there was no evidence that anyone else other than SSP Castelle fired at the material time when Miss Hines was injured. In particular, there was no evidence that DC McIntosh fired. The Court of Appeal judges, they stated that reasonable inference could be drawn that Miss Hines was injured by bullet fragments from Castelle's gun. In the end, the judges made the following orders. 1. The appeal is dismissed. 2. The convictions and sentences are affirmed. And 3. The sentences are to be reckoned as having commenced on December 14, 2018, the date they were imposed. So the next avenue open to Castelle is that he can take this matter to the Privy Council. Now, time will tell whether or not he's gonna go that route. Also, SSP Castelle, he retired from the JCF when he became 60 years old in April of this year. If SSP Castelle do not take the matter to the Privy Council, or if he take it to the Privy Council and he loses, he's gonna end up losing his pension. If he takes it to the Privy Council and he ends up winning, then his pension would be restored, but he will not be going back into the JCF because he already passed the age of retirement, or he has already retired. Young police officers, I hope you learn something from this. Think before pulling your gun, even to fire warning shots. Many of us would have expected that the actions that SSP Castelle took on that day would have been undertaken by a junior rank, or even the DC who was in the car with him. Ah boy. Let's hope that the lady who was injured, she's now fully recovered. Blessed love, everybody.
Tell a friend for tell a friend for tell a friend about Popeye Newslink and PNL Blog TV. Like, subscribe and share. Quicksilver sing, if we just unite, what a country this will be. If we just unite, Jamaica live in unity. If we Jamaicans mash up Jamaica. Oh Jamaica, me sweet Jamaica. I coulda sunshine or rain. Jamaica, no problem, no pain. Rude boy them knock out can't tame, but me want me country back. Give me country back. To the street and the lane, everybody them start complain. Bloodshed, what a shame, but me want me country back. Give me country back. Crime it a mash up Jamaica. Criminals them a mash up Jamaica. Jamaicans mash up Jamaica. Oh Jamaica, me sweet Jamaica. Crime it a mash up Jamaica. Criminals them a mash up Jamaica. Jamaicans mash up Jamaica. Oh Jamaica, me sweet Jamaica. Jamaica, the land of the sun. Jamaica become now the land of the gun. East and north and south when it turn. Country and town man a play blood a run. Murder, don't you baby me hear them a murder. Cut it out, tell them no gonna further. Man a dead like cans and bird, yeah. Who no listen them a word, yeah. Crime it a mash up Jamaica. Criminals them